Hello. So this is a video that I've actually been wanting to do for quite some time, I would say. This is more Three Stooges books. Last year, I did the first video of Three Stooges books, which I will put a link to in the description down below. And since then, I've collected a number of other new, well, not necessarily new, but new to me, Three Stooges books, in addition to those I showed in the last video. And since I have all of those together now, I had been wanting to actually film a follow-up to showcase those. Now, I will admit that some of these I have actually read in their entirety already. Since I've gotten them, I actually have had a chance to read some of these. Others I've only kind of thumbed through so far, so some I can only kind of speak in broad strokes about while showing them. Others, again, I have actually read in the very recent past, within the last few months. So anyway, might as well get started. First, a couple of sort of, I guess you could say, broad overview books. First up, we have The Wacky World of the Three Stooges by Anne McCary. This is from the early 90s, 92, I believe. And as you can see, since it's getting a nice glare from the lamp above the table here, this is an ex-library copy that I have. Nice, good-sized book, certainly. On the thin side, but it is kind of a basic overview biography of the Three Stooges. A lot of good pictures. So I would say, if nothing else, this is probably actually worth picking up to have, again, a lot of these production stills and other photos on maybe a somewhat larger scale than they appear in other publications. And there are actually a few I don't recall seeing printed in some of those other books, like that one of Larry. The text, again, I haven't read this one in its entirety, but it looks like kind of a cursory, sort of short form biography of the act as a team. From what I can tell, the biographical information here is probably nothing that you wouldn't get in more detail in, say, the Michael Fleming illustrated biography that I showed in the last video. Certainly wouldn't necessarily match up to the Three Stooges scrapbook by the Lindberghs and Joan Moore. But again, at least for the pictures alone, if you're a big fan, this is probably worth picking up. And again, the text I've only kind of skimmed parts of, so I haven't like fact-checked it or anything to so I can't really speak to its veracity in that way. But yeah, again, looks like a decent, quick biography. And again, the pictures, since it is a larger scale book, the pictures are probably worthwhile. And you do have actually a bit of a handy filmography in the back. It is just the titles and release years in order, but again, that might be handy as compared to the more in-depth filmographies in other books, or certainly even the complete Three Stooges by John Solomon, which is, again, an extremely in-depth book. If you just want like a list of the titles to see when they came out, this could be useful. Anyway, that is The Wacky World of the Three Stooges. Next we have The Three Stooges, Pop Culture Legends. Another ex-library book, as you can see. This one is, it's not in terrible shape, but it's definitely been through the wars in, I think this one came from a school library, so wherever it came from, at least the cover has been. The text inside the actual pages are in quite good condition, actually. Yeah, I thought this had somewhere on it what library it came from. Oh, yeah, there it is. Boston High School, apparently. This looks like, again, and this is another one I haven't read in its entirety yet, but this kind of looks like the same sort of thing. Maybe a little bit more in-depth than The Wacky World of the Three Stooges, but not as in-depth as, again, the Three Stooges illustrated biography by Michael Fleming, or certainly, again, the Three Stooges scrapbook, which is kind of the standard. So you have some nice pictures again. Probably none in this one that you can't find in other books. And again, I haven't actually read the text in its entirety, so I can't like speak to whether or not there are any inaccuracies or anything. Probably nothing glaring, I'm guessing. But again, this is kind of a basic sort of short form biography of the act. And if you're looking for that kind of thing, worthwhile, I suppose. Certainly for a collector of Three Stooges lore, it's worth having in my collection. So that is The Three Stooges Pop Culture Legends by Mark and Ellen Scordato. Then we have, this is probably one of the newer books on my list. This is Who Were the Three Stooges? This is part of a lengthy series of books put out by Penguin Publishers. The Who HQ series. You can find this kind of book on just about any pop culture figure you could think of. Past or present, really. They seem to have pretty much everyone available in this. This is a kid's biography. So again, it's not going to be super in-depth or anything. This, by the way, is by Pam Pollock and Meg Belviso. So it's not going to be super in-depth since it is primarily for a children's audience. The cool thing about this one, though, and even for, adult fans, this, I think, really makes this one worth picking up, is the really great original illustrations in this. Some of them are, kind of renderings of, in this case, the lobby card for Men in Black. But there's some really great original artwork in here. There's Shemp and Mo with Ted Healy, for instance. So yeah, the illustrations alone in this are really cool stuff. Yeah, I recommend this simply on that basis alone. There's a rendering of the famous quick scene in Hold That Lion, the only time that Mo, Shemp, and Curly, the three Howard brothers, actually appeared together on film. So, yeah, this one, for the illustrations alone, and the kind of big head-style artwork cover, which all of this series of books have, yeah, this one's probably worth grabbing if you're, again, a big fan, even if you're not a part of the kid audience that it's geared towards. Yeah, very cool artwork in here. Next, we have a few Stooge-specific, or at least figures that are Stooge-adjacent specific books. First up is another Stooge autobiography, which there are not too many of. There's Mo Howard and the Three Stooges, aka I Stooged to Conquer, Mo's autobiography. And then I don't have it, but there is the kind of infamous A Stroke of Luck by Larry, which is kind of notoriously not great, but certainly is a major collector's item. Yeah, again, otherwise there aren't too many autobiographies of the Stooges. Otherwise, past Mo Howard and the Three Stooges and A Stroke of Luck, and the one I'm going to show momentarily, the only, I'm not really aware of any others. There's certainly biographies like Joan Howard Moore's book on Curly, but yeah, not autobiographies. So this one was kind of a neat find in several ways. This is Joe Besser's book. Joe Besser, of course, the Stooge who replaced Shemp in the lineup after Shemp's passing in 1955, I believe it was. And Joe Besser only was with the Stooges for 2 years. There is, in several sources, including the made-for-TV biopic of the Stooges from, when was that, late 90s, early 2000s, maybe. It's a lot of misinformation about him not wanting to be a Stooge and things like that, which is actually not true, as this book can attest, and other sources that are in the know can attest. Yeah, Joe Besser had an autobiography that he co-wrote with the Lenberg brothers, who also, with Joan Howard Moore, co-wrote the Three Stooges scrapbook, and have worked on other Stooge and Stooge adjacent and other Hollywood figures books. This also has at least 2 publications. This is the first edition from the 1980s, and I read through this, and it's really worth reading. It's really kind of a full life story, but focusing primarily on his years in show business, which were pretty all-encompassing. Joe started in vaudeville, as did the Stooges, but also worked in radio, in motion pictures, of course, and in television, and in voice acting in the later years of his career, when he did voices for several Hanna-Barbera cartoons, including the I Dream of Jeannie cartoon that they did. So yeah, he kind of worked with everyone, seemingly. He was a regular on the Abbott and Costello show. He worked with Milton Berle, who did the foreword for this book. Yeah, again, so many major figures he worked with, and he talks about all of those experiences. There's, of course, some good photos here, including personal photos of Joe's. Joe, maybe not the most popular Stooge overall, but I've come to appreciate his shorts. I think the biggest issue with them really is that a lot of them were kind of remakes of shorts that previously had been made with Curly, or I think even a couple with Shemp originally. But if you just kind of take Joe on his own and don't try to compare him to Curly or Shemp, because unlike Curly Joe, he wasn't really trying to imitate Curly or Shemp. He brought his own character into it. He basically was doing Stinky, the character he did on the Abbott and Costello show. That was basically the persona that he brought into the Three Stooges. So he had a different take. It was something new, and his shorts I've come to appreciate, and they have some good laughs to them. He was a funny guy on his own, and this work with the Stooges may well not be his strongest work overall, but yeah, I've come to appreciate them. And if you go take a look at them again, and again, don't try to compare them to Shemp or especially to Curly, you'll probably get some enjoyment out of them, more than you think you did in the past. So yeah, definitely a very good autobiography. I enjoyed reading this quite a bit, and again, kind of going through all of his show business experiences, etc. It's kind of bookended with the Three Stooges getting the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in the 1980s, which was kind of a long process, and they were very late in getting that. Certainly they deserved to have it earlier. Joe was the only Stooge able to attend the ceremony, since Curly Joe, I believe, was ill at the time, and Moe, Larry, Curly, and Shemp all had passed away, unfortunately, by the time they got their star. This book, again, has at least 2 editions, and the republication of it, this is the first edition, the republication actually does have a different title, which maybe is a little more positive sounding. The second version of it is called Once a Stooge, Always a Stooge, instead of Not Just a Stooge. When he first published it, I suppose he wanted to kind of portray that he did a lot more than just his 2 years with the Three Stooges, and again, maybe a dozen to 2 dozen shorts. I would have to look and see exactly how many there were, but not that many. But later he seemed to come around even more to accepting that he was primarily being remembered as a member of the Three Stooges, and I suppose changing the title for its second run of publication reflected that. I believe the Once a Stooge, Always a Stooge version also has more pictures in it, so I would say that I would like to eventually replace this copy with that one, again, just because there's more material, if not text, than at least in photos. But there's one reason I don't want to do that, and this is completely unexpected. This book was not listed with this feature in the online listing I bought it from. But I was flipping through it, and for some reason I have a bad habit when I'm just thumbing through a book. I, for some reason, just about always go back to front instead of the other way around. I don't know why I do that, but yeah, I was doing that with this book when I first got it, and because I went back to front, I didn't actually see this until I got to the end of flipping through it and came to the front page. And that is that this is, in fact, signed by Joe Besser. Signed to someone named Eric, as you can see, but I don't know who Eric was. But yeah, it is indeed an actual signature by Joe Besser. I matched it up to other known signatures of his, and this is legit. This is actually his. So this is very special to me, I have to say. I always wanted to have, you know, something that was connected to the Stooges in some way. You know, whether that be just like a, I don't know, a lobby card or, you know, something with a signature on it, or maybe a prop from one of the shorts. Those are hard to come by, I'm sure. But I always wanted to have, you know, just something that, you know, they had actually laid hands on and, you know, seen and what have you. Um, and yeah, this actually is that. It is Joe Besser's signature, an actual Stooges signature that I now have in my possession. So, yeah, this is very special to me personally. So maybe I will sometime pick up the newer edition of this book again, just to have the additional photos and things like that. But yeah, I'm not going to part with this copy. Yeah, this is a keeper. This is one I'm going to hang on to, and it has a special place in my library, I would say. So anyway, that is again something that was a shock when I first saw it, and yeah, it was. So anyway, next we have, as far as Stooge specific books, these are actually not Stooge directly, but Stooge adjacent figures. These are two books by Bill Casara, who's a gentleman from Los Angeles, a former police officer, according to his biographical information, who's actually written a number of books on various Hollywood figures, but he's written two on people directly connected to the Three Stooges. One of which is Nobody's Stooge, Ted Healy. And this is basically the biography of Ted Healy. Surprisingly, there don't seem to be any others. And it's quite an interesting one, going into a good amount of detail about Healy's career, which is maybe not as well remembered as perhaps it should be. Certainly it talks about his time with the Stooges, but it talks about his vaudeville work and various other film projects he did outside of his work with his Stooges, as the act originally was. It was Ted Healy and his Stooges. They actually had a few other names that they worked under with Healy also. Once again, a lot of great photos in here. And it also does go quite a bit into detail about what's known about Healy's premature and somewhat mysterious passing, and kind of offers some conclusions about what may have happened to him. So I won't go into too much detail if you want to read it. You know, it's a true story from 80 plus years ago, so I don't know if I really need a spoiler space. But yeah, if you do want to read this one, and I recommend doing so, it's worth seeking out. And again, there's a lot of good information in here. And again, there is that kind of mystery aspect of Healy's final fate that this goes into also. So yeah, this one definitely I recommend. By the same author, Bill Casara. Here we have Vernon Dent, Stooge Heavy, second banana to the Three Stooges and other film comedy greats. This one is a little bit more of a superficial biography. It has as much detail as is possible, I think. The issue really, outside of the author's control, is simply that there just isn't as much information available on Vernon Dent as there is on someone like Ted Healy. So it is shorter, and there isn't as much detail to it. But certainly interesting all the same. Vernon Dent was, of course, best known for playing bankers and other authority figures in Three Stooges shorts. Here he is as a Nazi officer on the cover photo. And again, he had this kind of dignified persona that often will be kind of taken down a few pegs by the Stooges by the end of the short. But yeah, he had an interesting career going all the way back to the silent era. Here he is in the silent movie Picking Peaches with Harry Langdon in 1924, which was an Mack Sennett production. He also was a lyricist, a songwriter as well. So yeah, very interesting career. And again, as much information as was able to be found about him is in here. And I don't believe there are, and it's unlikely that there will be any other books dedicated to Vernon Dent. So, yeah, this one's worth seeking out. And I wouldn't mind seeing more books on other figures kind of connected to the Stooges. You know, the Bud Jamisons, Dudley Dickersons, Christine McIntyres, people like them, who also frequently appeared with the Stooges. Again, I don't know how much biographical info about them there is, but it would be interesting to see other attempts made at that. Finally, I have some comic books here, or graphic novels if you prefer. First, these are both by Paper Cuts. Paper Cuts did the 2 best of Stooge comics books that I showed in the last video. Those were republications of sort of classic Three Stooges comics from like the 50s and 60s. These are original comics, and these came out around the time of the Farrelly Brothers movie, as you can see, since they use a still from that in the back. But the art style is very close to the art style used in some of those sort of Norman Maurer era comics from the 50s and 60s. So I haven't read the stories in these yet, but the artwork is pretty solid overall. So yeah, again, might be worth grabbing. This is Volume 1, Bedbug, and Volume 2 is, I guess, the holiday issue, Ebenezer Scrooge. Ebenezer Stooge, I should say. Wow, I screwed that up. Yeah, I'll have to read this in December, I think. Kind of adjacent to A Christmas Carol, which I'm not the biggest Charles Dickens fan overall. Generally speaking, that early to mid 19th century sort of overly floral style of writing that Charles Dickens and Jane Austen and authors of that era featured. I'm not such a big fan of that. I find it hard to get through a lot of that really dense language. There's a lot of 18th century literature that I like a lot, and then certainly later 19th century when it gets to, you know, the era of Mark Twain and people like that. I love that stuff. But yeah, the Dickens era stuff, for the most part, I'm not as big on. But I do love A Christmas Carol. It's short, for one thing, but Christmas Carol it's a great story. It really is. I do read it every few years, and yeah, maybe I'll give the original a spin again this December. And I'll give this a spin too. And there's also things like Batman Noel, which is, you know, another comic where the concept is, what if A Christmas Carol but Batman? It's actually very cool and has great artwork too. But yeah, that seems to be the main story in this book, kind of a take on a Christmas Carol, I suppose. And it looks like these do have other stories in addition to the main one. There's a Jack and the Beanstalk story in this one, it looks like. So, yeah, these are probably worth seeking out. There's Larry David as the nun in the Farrelly Brothers movie. Anyway, the other interesting thing about this is there's a sort of front page here that shows the comics published by Paper Cuts. So the 2 I'm showing in this episode and the 2 I featured in the previous Stooges books video. But interestingly, there's a coming soon section which has 2 more volumes of these original comics, Sell Blockheads and Don't Try This at Home. And then there is also a 3rd volume of the best of collections. So a 3rd volume of republished, probably 1960s era comics. The problem is, from what I've been able to gather, I've looked all over the internet, it doesn't seem any of these 3 books ever actually were published. So I don't know what the story with that is, why they never came out, whether they were completed or maybe not. Maybe these are just mock-up covers. But yeah, why they never came out, I don't know. But if they do exist, hopefully at some point they'll be published. I don't know if Paper Cuts is still in business. I haven't looked into that, but if they're not, hopefully somebody else can get the material from these books and put it out in some form. I'm especially interested in this Volume 4, Don't Try This at Home, because it looks like that's a wrestling story. So, yeah, I'd definitely be interested in that one. So yeah, that's the two Paper Cuts comic books I have, and from what I can tell, the two that were published outside of those best of collections. Then finally, I have 2 volumes of collected current comics, relatively current comics, by American Mythology. So these are the ones that are currently in print. Volume 2 here, TV Time, I actually ordered directly from American Mythology, so that one's direct from the source. But these are, again, the modern, the current comics that are being published. And I haven't read all of these yet, but I've read a few stories from the first volume, and I've kind of thumbed through the rest, and I've also thumbed through this one. I haven't gotten a chance to read through all of that yet. But these are really cool. For one thing, again, great artwork. This cover is amazing, for one thing. Yeah, this would be a great poster. I'd like to just have, you know, this hanging up somewhere. But yeah, the artwork for the actual comics is very cool also. And there's kind of a multitude of different styles and different genres that they appear in, some of which they appeared in, you know, the actual shorts, and some are creative license where they can put them into other types of scenarios. So there's like a film noir detective themed story here, which is one of the ones I have read through, and this is a pretty fun story. There is kind of a zombie story here, which has kind of a fun twist to it. And yeah, the cool thing with this also is, again, you get a few different art styles with the different comics. So again, you have, say, the film noir story drawn in this kind of realistic style. And then you have something like, where was it? Well, here's kind of a Ghostbusters parody that they did. This has a style more like the 1960s era comics. And then you have this Halloween one here, which is drawn in a much more of a cartoony style. Some of the expressions are almost Spunko type, like, you know, the Ren and Stimpy cartoons. Less said about the creators of those, the better, but Ren and Stimpy was formative to my youth nonetheless. So yeah, again, kind of cool to have a few different art styles in different stories in this. And then at the end, it actually does have republications of a few vintage comics also. So yeah, nice collection here. And there's kind of a cover gallery at the end. These were some of the covers of the original comics that are reprinted in this collected edition, including the original source for this really fantastic cover image. And the TV Time book is kind of the same thing. I haven't read through these stories yet, but again, you have a few different themes. On a bus going to Poughkeepsie there. I just saw, where was that? There it is. All right, so that definitely piques my interest right away. Poughkeepsie's pretty local to where I am. But yeah, looks like a medieval theme story here, maybe a Renaissance fair. Again, I haven't read it yet. Yeah, again, just cool to see them in different types of settings than actually appeared in the shorts. Here's one that actually puts them in modern times, it looks like. So that's kind of cool. And once again, like the first volume of this, there are in the back kind of a few reproductions, a few reprints of some vintage comics, and then a cover gallery also. So yeah, that's what I have. Three Stooges books part 2. Some cool stuff. Again, the sort of overview books on the act are maybe not essentials, but they're nice to have for a collector and for a die-hard fan. Certainly the Who Is book is worth picking up just for the artwork. Same with the comics, really. And the Bill Casara books are neat because they focus on figures that don't necessarily have a lot of biographical information out there overall. And that particular copy of the Joe Besser book, that is near and dear to me. So, yeah, that one I will definitely be hanging on to. So, yeah, that's Three Stooges books part 2 in a nutshell. Will there be a part 3? Well, probably not anytime soon, but, well, who knows. Someday, perhaps, I'll have enough new Three Stooges books to do a third part of this. I don't know. It's probably a year or years away, but if it ever happens, I'll be sure to do it. Well, that's kind of how it works, isn't it? If I'm going to do it, I'll do it. Yeah, it's late. On that note, have a good night. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and we will see you again with something else soon. Bye.